Hi, Jens. Welcome to F.A.C.E.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Got you loud and clear, Jens. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Okay. Do you want to switch my video on? Or you don't use video?
Sure, go ahead. Also, if you have any charts to show or you just want to talk, what do you want to do?
Yeah. So I think there's a setting you need to change to be able to show my video if you want to do so.
No, I don't believe so. You just click the start video.
Yeah, if I do that, it says
mine
the
just
host
came on.
Yeah, yours came on. It says the host has blocked it. So maybe if you make me a co-host, I can show my screen as well.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have the ability to do that either. I was just looking myself. Good morning, Jens. Thanks for joining us today.
Okay, we can do it
there you go, Jens.
Okay, let me try. There you go.
There you are.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, nice to meet you.
I did comb my hair especially nicely this morning, so I thought it'd be a shame not to use the video.
All right, yeah, it looks good. What, you have some mousse on there? Look at I have a pandemic haircut still, Jen. So anyway, really nice to meet you. And I read a bit about your background, and I went to your website, and what an interesting career you had. You want to tell our viewers and people will see the video later what the genesis was for you to get to Exante?
Yeah, I could definitely do that. So I worked for Goldman for quite a few years, almost 10 in London and in New York, and I was in charge of the currency strategy based out of New York, a global currency strategy for a number of years. Yeah. And then I had a shorter start.
Go right. Are you a blue blood? How'd you get in there at Goldman? Was it your grades?
No, I studied at the wrong university in the wrong country, so it's definitely not that. It was very simple. I applied for a printed ad in The Economist, and that's how I got the job. So it's a very simple story.
Okay, all right.
Nobody ever heard about my university or the grade scale we use in Denmark.
Yeah, I thought maybe you went to Yale and you're in the skulls, and they recruit all those guys. So
in Denmark, we use grades from 0 to 13, at least when I studied. So if you had an average of 10, how can you have 10 as an average? It's not even like there's normally 4 is the highest. Anyway, so so I did that. Then I had a brief stint at Bridgewater Associates, and then. That I became like head of research for Nomura Securities, different research groups. It's always complicated with these different groups, but broader than FX. So that was economics, fixed income, even some equity at some point, even though I'm not an equity specialist. So
how do you like having your own shop?
So I've been doing it I've been doing it for 5.5 years now. So if you really like to just sit on the couch the whole day, it's not the right thing to do. But if you like to be in control of what you're doing, hire smart people to help you, and build a business. It's a ton of fun. So we have some secret stuff going on in the background. So there's probably going to be some press releases we're going to put out. So if you want to follow what's going on with my company, you can follow me on at either Exante Data handle, or you can do at J Nordvig, which is my own handle. Anyway, so we want to expand. So we have some sneaky plans. So there's probably going to be some announcements in the next couple of months.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye out for that. And, we're going to make you a nice commercial here today, Jens.
Good
start anyway. And completely spontaneous. So what's on your radar? Blake wanted me to ask you if this is a new record, I know you do a lot of polling and intelligence gathering that way. Is this a record number of U.S. households as far as being owners of equities at this time?
I don't know the stats for that, but I would think it is. So we'll have to go and look it up. But my feeling would be that it is, right? Because we have so many people who've signed up for the Robinhood accounts and all that kind of stuff that were not involved before, and they in the generation that was had very little penetration before. So I would even without knowing the number, I would bet a lot of money that the answer is yes.
Okay. All right. So tell us what's on your radar. What do you think is really critical as summer winds down?
Yeah.
And the hedgies will be coming back from the Hamptons in a few weeks, and maybe we'll start getting some volume and maybe a little bit more movement in the markets. What are you saying to people with the way things are set up here?
So I'm a fundamental guy. So the way I deal with technical aspects of the market is that we do a lot of flow analysis, right? So instead of looking at charts to get a technical picture, which a lot of people are doing, and I'm not saying anything is wrong with that, but we want to do something a bit different, right? So we look at fundamentals, and then the technical dimension really comes from us doing a lot of flow modeling.
Is that like money flow into different instruments? And
yeah, so we track those flows. Like we have a whole platform called Global Flow Analytics. We have literally 100,000 time series on capital flows, and that's how we monitor that. So I'll just give you an example, right? So right now, fundamentally speaking, you can argue that we're at a point where we're going into a part of the cycle where we're getting sufficiently close to Fed tightening, not just in taper terms, but in actual terms of rate liftoff, where the correlation to short rates in the US becomes very important for the dollar. Like you have periods where that correlation is not very important, but when you get within 1 year liftoff, it tends to become very important, like you saw in 2016 and in 14 for that matter. So we're getting to that point. So if you think the US economy is going to do okay, you can say, okay, rates are going to continue to drift higher, euro dollar is going to be under downward pressure, right? So that's sort of the fundamental view. The problem with that fundamental view is that the systematic players in the market are already extremely short euro. So maybe I'll show what I mean. Let's see if I can share my screen here.
And let me ask you this, having written the book, Fall of the Euro. Yeah. You're a Renaissance man, Jens. You're an author and everything. Does that give you some type of bias on your narrative? And that was published, 8 years ago?
I don't think so. I'm a pretty pragmatic guy. I've traded the euro very long last year. We've had some long expressions earlier this year, but at the moment it's different. So I try not to get stuck.
All right, but come on.
It's up there, by the way.
Huh?
It's up there, by the way.
I know, that's what I saw. Anyway, yes, and you could go right to Amazon to buy it. Do you still think, though, that it's an experiment eventually bound to fail based on what you may have written back then?
It's really all about politics, right? So we had a euro crisis that played out from 2010 to 2012 mostly.
Yeah.
And they put in place various insurance mechanisms to make sure that we couldn't have like just a financial crisis unraveling everything. So they've done that. They did even more here in the pandemic because it was maybe not quite enough what they did in that period. So it's all about politics. Are all the different countries willing to vote in a way that means they are staying or not? So we have to watch the French election as we did 5 years ago when it comes up, right? So it's about politics. So that's really what
is it about Lagarde? Is it about Lagarde now as much as it was about Draghi?
Draghi was a bit of a special character, but in terms of sort of being a unifying figure, Lagarde would have some of the same qualities. Obviously, used to be the finance minister in France, right? So she's very connected to fiscal policy. I think from an economic perspective, the euro construct is a very vulnerable construct, but it all comes down to what people are voting. So I think Italy is a good example, right? You can look at the surveys, like how popular is the euro? So the EU is not very popular in Italy, but people don't want to get rid of the euro. They know it's better than the lira. So that's kind of what holds it together, that you have a hard currency. Some people in Bitcoin space will say it's not a very hard currency, but relatively it's a pretty hard currency. And you can see what's happening to EM currencies around the world, right? Some of them fallen 50% here in the pandemic. So that's what people do not want to have.
Well, if the Greeks in their situation and go back to the drachma and things were even more desperate than in Italy, right?
That's right. That's right.
Then. So yeah, if they wouldn't break away, who would break away now?
No, I think that's exactly the right thing. So we've seen, okay, the UK was different. Like they didn't have the currency, right? But the politics there were different, right? So you have to analyze each country's politics. It could also be that there's some Eastern European countries that some of them have the euro, some don't. But it could be that they have totally different politics where an exit is different. Like the question I'm always getting is, okay, when is Germany going to say enough? That analysis, I think, is pretty easy because of the Second World War, because of the politics there, them abandoning Europe is just unthinkable. So that's not where it's going to come from, in my view. Can I show one picture to you?
Yeah, sure. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, go back to the original question there. So
all right, and you would click. Oh, there you go, Jens. Okay, yeah. Beautiful.
All so right, I'm just showing some of our data now. So I'm going to go into some of the positioning stuff that we do. Just look at CTAs. I'm going to show you aggregate dollar positioning in the systematic trading community. So, for example, if I just click here, this is just a summary of what the dollar positioning is in systematic trading space. So all the CTAs that follow mostly trend following rules, right? So you can see we came into this year with that community being more than $200 billion short. And now we've been through a phase of pretty dramatic accumulation and we're meaningfully long, like close to $100 billion worth, right? So to go back to this euro dilemma that we have from a trading perspective, and I think the reason you want to be pretty tactical right now is, okay, I can come up with a pretty good fundamental story why euro dollar needs to break. And we did try to break 117, obviously, last week in the risk aversion phase. But if the Fed comes into play, I can see a fundamental argument. The problem is that the systematic community already has it. They already have the dollar longs now. And when you have dollar longs, you definitely have euro shorts, right? That's where you get the big size.
So maybe just a shakeout move that could take the euro back to, say, 120, 119, and then a resumption of the dollar bull trend.
So when we analyze these positioning metrics, right, we look at where the level is, and then we look at exactly the triggers for when it's going to be washed out. So I don't think there's any catalyst for it washing out right now. Right. But it's something that if we started to drift higher, then it's hard to hold on to your position because then the washout is going to come, right? So you have to be careful, very careful with your stops, I would say. That's what I would say. So if you're trading the euro short, you have to be very, very careful with your stops here. That's
so what do you mean by careful with your stops? More tolerance than usual, giving your trade more room to breathe?
Well, it depends on what your horizon is, but I would say this is a situation where if something goes wrong in a fundamental view, and you actually go into a real washout phase where the CTAs flip, then you're going to have a 3-4% move. So. You probably don't want to take that amount of pain. Yeah.
Can't wait for 3-4% moves.
No, exactly.
Can't wait.
No. So so that's where we are on that. Just in terms of big macro stuff, we are more than 18 months into a pandemic, right? And what I find absolutely amazing is that we have a company where we essentially deliver macro strategy to institutional investors, right?
And you're still working remotely.
We're still working remotely. And over the last month, I would say 50% of all the macro questions we get are still COVID related. It's just unbelievable, right? And where it's been interesting from a trading perspective is places like Australia, right? So the countries that are interesting where you can really kind of forecast the virus and forecast what the currency is going to do are the places where they have elimination strategy, where they still like take dramatic action against cases, right? So we've seen that in Australia, and we've seen
200-day lockdown.
Yeah, and we've seen that even in New Zealand, right? Okay, they have one case, and then they lock down the capital, right? So those countries are very vulnerable to cases, at least until they get more of the population vaccinated. So I would say right now we are focused on Australia. Like what's going on with Australia that's interesting? Okay, they can have a longer lockdown that is expected. There's also something going on with iron ore prices. Iron ore prices have really turned over the last month or so. China has different policies with iron ore that could be problematic. There's the broader dollar trend, US dollar trend that could come into play if the US yield curve start to move again. There are some vulnerability. We've already moved, so I would say at this point in time, we would probably do a flip where we say, okay, let's flip from having spot exposure to optionalized exposure, in the sense that we think there is actually meaningful downside still, but we've already moved, right? So it's a sort of different way to manage your stock.
70-80% of the move is done. Is that what you're thinking?
I think, 70 is probably like, there could be another 30% left, something like that.
Okay.
And then if we actually hit like big figure 70, like maybe they can sort of change the mindset for some people. But I think that's one thing to look at.
Will the US ever shut down again, Jens?
I don't think so.
Okay.
So
you agree with Blake? There'd be a revolution here?
I think you can just see it. We have some states that have pretty dramatic situation, right? And lockdown is not even being discussed.
Right.
Like we're discussing whether you should wear a mask here and there. That's very far from lockdown. So and also maybe I'll show just I actually track. I put all a lot of our COVID analytics we put on Twitter. So we actually put it out there, so you can track some of the same analytics that I track, and I can go into the ex-ante data feed here. And this, I'm just showing literally what you can see, right? So if I just show you what's on there from today, you can go and track the pandemic. So these are some data analytics that we put out in a algorithmic way, right? So if you look at what's the sort of global heat map of cases, you can see that Australia there still on a week-on-week basis growing like 80%. So they don't have it under control. If you go to the US, which is up here at the top, this is a daily thing, right? So we're growing 11% week on week in the US. That came from 30% a couple of weeks ago. So things are improving in the US, and there's also, I think that probably the best indicator is look at, okay, how many people are coming into the hospital in California and Florida and Texas, those big states. And in Florida, that has been very much in the press, it looks like the hospitalizations are just plateauing. So that's something that I think is important. I think next couple of days might see a descent there. I think that's going to change the sentiment a little bit. So I just went into my own handle there. If people want to follow what I'm saying, they can do that. And I'll just show you one chart that I sent out yesterday. So this is the Florida hospitalizations, and you can see the red line there. It's just starting to plateau in the last week. It hasn't come down yet, but like a plateau is the leading indicator of a descent. So hopefully the school reopening and so forth would not create another spike. But if it wasn't from the school reopening, I would have pretty high conviction that we're going to be in a peaking phase in a lot of US states. And it kind of makes sense, right? The states that had the first outbreak in the US, Louisiana and so forth, are already coming down in the Delta wave here I'm referring to. Yeah.
Okay, can we switch gears to the Fed?
Sure.
Since everyone's waiting for Jackson Hole and, the powerful words of our Fed chairman telling us everything will be okay. What are you thinking here, Jens? Everyone thinks Powell's going to say something. He may just say nothing. What do you think?
That's definitely a possibility. So what I try to do into these events, I try to say, okay, let's try to sort of be inside his head, right?
Yeah.
Because like the danger with Fed watching is you look at something that he said a month ago, and you say, okay, that's what he's thinking. But you really have to put yourself inside his head and say, what is he thinking right now? What is he thinking right now? He doesn't know exactly what Delta is doing. Nobody knows, right? And there's definitely creating some uncertainty for him. We've had some data points that are weaker, like retail sales were softer and so forth. He's hoping that's going to bounce back, but he doesn't know for sure. There's also some of the alternative data for hiring that we look, and I know the Fed looks at it as well, that is showing some softness in the restaurant sector, right? So we're probably not going to get 1 million gain in payrolls next month if we have like some slowing there. So those are the things that he's worried about. On the other hand, the underlying trend in the economy has looked very good, and inflation is so high that they can't be super relaxed. So what does that mean for him? It means he does not want to box himself in. There's no upside in him saying, oh, we're definitely going to taper in September. Why would he commit to that when he's just in front of some data releases that are going to make him a lot wiser? In addition, they've already communicated relatively clearly that tapering is getting closer. It's not that they have to say anything new, right? Yeah, everybody is expecting it November and December. So I'll be pretty surprised if he says something that is very clear, incrementally clear, I should say, relative to what they have already said. So I think actually the only thing that really matters to me at Jackson Hole is, okay, is he going to clarify how much inflation overshoot they really want to tolerate? But I think we've gotten much more clarity on that in the last couple of months. 2.1 and 2.2 is really what they're looking at. It's not 2.5. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is how concerned are they really about this Delta wave? They communicated a month ago that they were not very concerned. Has that changed? That's going to be irrelevant. But I think we're in a mode here where the data is going to speak. Like last year the data didn't matter at all. Like we had huge trends in all markets, and it didn't matter whether data came out this way or that way. But now it does matter, right? Because policymakers have to be precise. I don't normally spend a lot of time on forecasting payrolls, right? Because everybody's forecasting payrolls, and it's hard to beat the market on that day. It's not like when I was at the desk at Goldman, we were trying to beat the market every single time, and we could even beat the market after the number was released, right? Because it took a couple of seconds for it to react. It doesn't take a couple of seconds anymore. But this number is an interesting one because there's a lot of things going on. So it's probably one of those where I'm going to forecast it well in advance and get ahead of the pre-positioning. So get ahead of the people who are getting ahead.
You're front running the front runners.
Yeah, I don't like that word for compliance reasons, but in essence, yes.
Oh, compliance. Oh, forgive us, NASD and FINRA. You know what, Jens? What do you think of this? I know these data points are important. I know that, the uncertainty of COVID is important, but here's me getting inside Paul's head. My term is almost over. I may not be renominated. There's talk that Yellen would rather have, I forgot her name. Do you know who I'm talking about? She's a
Brainerd.
Brainerd. Yeah. So why should I do anything to upset my legacy going out? And can't that mean more to a Fed chairman than any kind of data or uncertainty of COVID? Is how do I get to the finish line without a problem?
Yeah.
What do you think? You think he'll be renominated?
I think he probably will.
Interesting. Okay. Is that in his head then?
I think everybody who's in his position is clearly an extremely prestigious, honorable position to have had, right? So you're definitely going to think about, I don't want to make any mistakes. And he's been pretty balanced. Like we all remember the first press conference he had where he looked a bit shaky, but since then he's gained some confidence and he has a balanced approach.
Sure, yeah. After he sang Kumbaya with Yellen and Bernanke, after the tightening, and he reversed, I think they called him on the carpet, right? Mm-hmm. And he flipped and has been one, as good a dove as anyone out there. So I've never seen a hawk converted that quickly.
Yeah, no, that's what I meant. He's a balanced guy. He's not like locked into a certain position. Like I think he tries to absorb the information as it comes along. So I think actually what he has said about the inflation target really reflects that, because when they announced this average inflation targeting, right, where we started to think about, okay, how much overshooting will they allow? The way he phrased how they were thinking about that, I thought was very kind of descriptive or telling about who he is. He said, okay, we're going to decide essentially about how much overshooting we're going to allow once we see all the conditions associated with that overshooting. Like if you had an academic economist they would have been tempted to lock themselves into like a specific mathematical formula, and it probably would have been a disaster. So I think that shows that he's a pragmatic guy. And I think that means that he doesn't know what the right policy is yet to preserve his legacy, whether it is to stay on hold for longer or hike. Like his legacy will only really be known whether it's the right move in 10 years' time, right?
Yeah, in the rearview mirror. Yes. All right. Well, Jens, I really enjoyed our time, and I want to thank you. You're a currency guy. Our most valuable currency is time. Money comes and goes, time's gone forever. And thanks for spending some of your precious currency talking to us at F.A.C.E in our community and really opening our eyes to some great insights. Really enjoyed it and want to thank you. Plus, you're now my trading warrior brother. That's you survived an interview with Dale Pinkert. You're so a brother now, buddy.
I would say thank you. And then I would say I was very impressed that you invited me to speak at this, I think, 4 months in advance. It's one of the earliest invitations I've ever gotten. So you're definitely early.
Did you have enough time to prepare for this?
Thank you.
I know I've been working on it for 4 months. So thank you so much, Jens. Would love to have you again. Good hunting.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Jens Nordvig, everybody. And that's a wrap. See everyone tomorrow. What's tomorrow? Thursday. Okay, Silver Bulls tomorrow. Oh, you're welcome, Monica. He was great, wasn't he? I'll make a prediction. He'll be on Traders Summit. So I'm glad you guys enjoyed it, and you can join Blake in 16 minutes. So you guys just join. All right. I mean, the adults will be back from the Hamptons in a week and a half. Get used to navigating, get to know some guys in the chat room. If you're new, there are people there that will help you. Okay. Don't be afraid to ask for help and show and learn new things. So, become part of it. And I'll see everyone tomorrow. Remember, don't just count your pips, count your blessings. Adios, everyone. Good luck today.